we counted down in English rather than up in German to get here.
Yeah. It's really the odds of the world. It's either down in English or up in German.
Oh, I just got a message that said avoid legal snags by telling people they are being recorded. So heads up, you guys. You're recorded.
Thank you.
I'm not sure about this then.
Yeah.
To show that we're doing this is
I need you to consent. Yeah. Okay. He's under duress.
Do you have to know?
He's under duress.
How long do I have to decide to give you consent?
I think by the end of the episode.
Oh, okay. I'm good. Yeah, let's figure it out.
Until a judge orders you.
Yeah. So
that might be
I'm
true.
just gonna wait.
He follows the John Bolton protocol.
Yeah, I'm gonna
don't do shit unless a judge tells me to do it.
I'm surprised that
and even then, I'm gonna sell a book deal first before.
Right. I'm just surprised that isn't just the advisable way to do legal stuff these days. Like,
just
it'd
wait.
be cool.
Just wait. You don't take me to. Let's not go to court yet for my murder trial. Let's wait a few years. I got some shit to attend to.
It might be juicy.
I just have to tell all the witnesses not to participate real quick. Hold on.
Anyway. I have to win the lotto so I can buy a good defensive team.
Yeah, I'll be right with you.
That's our new replacement, like competition site for LegalZoom. It's just a legal advice for just smarter thinking, long play strategies, just legalstuff.com.
Long play.
You know,
I like that LP. Yeah,
we need to start a retirement planning company called that.
Oh,
long play.
Yeah, or the long game.
Long game is strong
because everybody loves the long game.
Not everybody loves the long game.
That's fair. You're right. Not everybody loves the long game.
But
everybody who hates it loves it in a way. Because check it out.
That's a hell of a catch, rhetorically.
I know, but here's why I believe it makes sense. Is a game, if it's by nature a challenge and you're like engaged in it, is fun. It's like reading a book, you know. It's like when it's almost over, it's almost too bad. You know, there's just this last. So anyway, I think it makes. I don't know. That's my argument basically. That's what I got for you. And I'd like to
game is better when it lasts longer.
Yeah,
I think you nailed it.
I would say
you nailed it.
Yeah, like a hammer
on that one.
Yeah,
it's a show that was not meant for most. Or that most don't get. How did that phrase go?
What?
The phrase.
What phrase?
It's a show that most don't get, or that's not meant for most. I said it happened the other day. You were like, "Oh, you gave me an epiphany." When I said it, now you're like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, no, and I'm trying to remember. Sorry, I wish I could have yes-anded that faster.
It was something about this world is a show that most don't get.
Right.
The meaning of which most don't get, or something to that effect.
It's on a channel. It's on HBO and shit. Most people don't got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one way or another, that's why I say the long game.
Long game.
You know, it's enjoyable because it's a longer game by nature. It's, you know, just take that to the bank. They'll cash it for you.
Yeah.
But what if you're losing the game? You kind of want it over with quickly.
That may be true, but there's always hope while the game is still on.
I guess so.
Unless
if the guys are just racking up points against you.
Yeah.
As long as the clock is still running, we still got a chance.
Anything can happen, man. Anything can happen. The other team could forfeit at the last minute.
Right. They could just get tired of winning.
Or one of the owners found out that one of the coaches has been giving some of the players like some sort of performance enhancing drugs, and he thinks, you know, the whole thing is a sham and he's so ethical. This is not realistic, but it's the type of shit like Republicans would like argue this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Just these long.
I feel like didn't Trump predict that America was just going to get we were going to be winning so much we get sick of winning?
I think I think we're at the sick of winning stage now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how we've.
And I do think it's important to not confuse the long shot with long game.
Agree.
In many ways, the long game negates your long shot because you've got a greater opportunity time period, a threshold.
Yeah.
I've most often heard long game referred to in terms of like men chasing women.
I think that's a common.
Yeah,
it's a common one.
Like, how do I transition out of the friend zone? We've been pals since high school, and I just keep staying in touch. How do I eventually?
You mean transition? Okay? So you're playing the long game by friending the
being
girl
friend,
first,
being cool, being there to talk with her about her relationship ills, being the cool dude. You know what I mean?
You should write this as like.
I feel like that's why I didn't know anything about it, because I've never played that game.
No, me neither. I don't play that game either, but I'm familiar with guys that play it. I've met guys that are in the act of playing it even.
Yeah.
And we've discussed that they are on long game status at this juncture with this individual. Just hoping the cards all, end up in their hand. But kind of like being, I'm not pushy. I'm going to wait for the opportunity.
I think
and the trick with that is it's like, then none of you are in the clear on what the hell's actually going on. You're obfuscating your real emotions and creating a falsified friendship. And now this person believes that there's many men who are like righteous.
Many men.
That made me think of the 50 Cent song. Many men.
That are there's plenty of guys and friends, girls that are not interested in having sex with each other. But if you are interested in that, if that's your prerogative and you're faking the funk, shame on you for that. You should be more forthright with your intentions. If that's
I think that's probably true. But then there's also just if we're talking scenarios, things like the person who works somewhere and sees a barista or a delivery person that they're interested in, and is I'm not going to just ask it. This is just you might be I'm not going to.
You've made this long game work for you. I've borne witness to this.
Well, this kind of thing, I think it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's, I don't know whether it's long game or not, but it's just thinking a little bit more long term. And I think I guess I'm also saying that's part of it too. That's the same thing. It's someone who's dragging some hopeless, romantic comedy, sad thing and just carrying it way too far.
Yeah.
That's no good. But if someone's just going, hey, I would be for example, seeing a person you're interested in and not trying to ask that person out, even though you have no guarantee that you're going to see him again. Let's say maybe you just see him at a restaurant or a bar, but you're I'm just going to, if I see that person again, or something, talk to them.
You're still being flirtatious.
Right.
You're being honestly flirtatious.
Yeah.
I feel the long game is just a reference for putting off what you could get right now for what is a better outcome later. Instead of cashing in on whatever short-term opportunity you might have, you instead delay gratification for a better outcome later. That's how I've always thought of the long game.
That's about fair.
Anyway,
yeah. I'm saying. I think my bottom line was just the fact that regardless of the game, unless it's just a sad, derivative of what was once a game, it should be kind of fun. You know what I mean? So
well, right. To me, you can't have a game without a scoreboard, and I have scoreboards for all of my long games. So
I'm impressed.
It makes it a lot more fun if you can prove that you're winning.
Well, what's interesting?
I delete the scoreboards for all the games I'm losing.
We were talking, and I guess we might as well plant the seed at least here about the idea of the case against reality. And I don't know if you guys checked that out at all. But the ultimate, I think, summarized point that this guy was essentially making is that our whole experience is basically how your eyes convert and translate light into a picture for your brain to see. It's not when you actually
magicians.
I guess they're
magicians.
Well, what he's saying is that more or less everything is kind of that type of an illusion. Not necessarily, even the brain is an illusion of the consciousness to that level. So there is no reality. There's some sort of experience, and the only way it can be understood on any level is if it's kind of mapped into.
We have emergency food coming.
Oh,
yes,
excellent! Emergency food.
All of our viewers, what just happened was that Bjorn is not pregnant and he's not rushing to the restroom. That way is the front door where the food is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's helpful because I consider myself. That's okay. I consider myself like a viewer in this instance because I didn't know either. So
yeah,
I'm far away. I'm in King County.
Far away. This is officially actually the first cast in this configuration where Bjorn and I are on this side together.
I would agree. Yeah. This is good. It's cozy. A special event. What do you call it? It's like a split screen inaugural.
Well, I think the tables have turned, my friend.
The table turner. Yes.
I think that's what this means.
Well, did you hear about what they said?
I'm sorry we interrupted your reality speech. I didn't.
Well, I wasn't gonna. I don't know.
Speech. I mean, but like, yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. I think that we'll leave that where it was, but there's
the reality of the matter was food was here.
Yeah.
There was no avoiding it.
I didn't see you bring the food in though, which is peculiar.
I just did.
He snuck it. He ate it all outside.
Really, almost looked like there was no food.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of food?
It's barbecue.
Barbecue.
Invisible barbecue.
Yeah. Invisible barbecue.
Mm-hmm. That's the best.
It's the healthiest. It's the healthiest kind of barbecue.
It's the most surreal, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there we go.
So, Bob, back to reality being an issue.
I mean, I think there it is the idea that I guess I'm not clear on a certain few details that are pretty key, like what exactly is experiencing these things, but he likened it to like virtual reality experience. So he said if you have a virtual reality glass, if you're wearing virtual VR glasses and you're playing some sort of game or have some experience where there's a tennis ball, if it comes at you and then falls right outside of your vision or your frame of vision, like you don't see it, but if you tilt your head with the glasses, there it is down there, right? Just like it would be in the real world. And he's like, well, that's basically just a second layer of what's already happening. You know what I mean? Like, so our existence is already a virtual reality in that way. Like, there is no ball there when you don't look at it. It only exists, when it's being observed. And even the observer doesn't exist unless it's being observed. I don't know. It was quite complicated. I can't do it justice, but it was
well, one way of thinking about that is our eyes only see certain part of the light spectrum, and looking at that same tennis ball, if you were some animal that only saw in like infrared light, you'd see something very different than what we experience as that tennis ball.
Yeah.
The reason we identify the tennis ball as that even odd color somewhere between yellow and green is because we uniquely have a capacity to distinguish between greens and reds very well. It's a primate trait. A lot of other animals don't have that. They don't see that distinction.
Well, that's got to be a hassle.
We see red and green very well because it helps us identify when fruit is ripe.
I was going to say, how would you deal with fruit if you
with your nose?
Yeah,
and poison.
So we
how
have
would you know what was poisonous?
Our optics are actually a pretty wide spectrum compared to a lot of other mammals, even if they're not as, like, say, finely tuned.
We just speak for yourself.
Yeah, with my 4 eyes. We just have like this medium case for all the senses, and and that's how we distinguish reality, using all of these portions of our senses in which we're okay at a lot of them. One of the interesting ones is perception and movement. And like the relativity theory loves to play with that idea. If you're in the train moving at light speed and you walk from one compartment to another, you're moving faster than light speed. That whole trick. Here's a question for you guys. What length do you believe standardized highway stripes are? And what's the length of space in between them?
I know that the spacing isn't standardized. They move them around to control traffic patterns.
That they do the spacing, but the length is
Is it carling?
Of the stripes.
Federally standardized since the 70s.
What is it? No.
Well, I'd like to hear, I guess.
A carling.
I'd say
I would assume
12 feet.
The stripe is 12 feet long. Okay.
Yeah.
Misha?
I'm going to say half that. 6.
6. Yeah. Rob's guess is really good. It's 10.
Okay.
And 20 between.
Okay.
Is the standard spacing for highways.
It might be
that's
a
good tidbit.
where
there
they
we go.
changed it.
Yeah. That most people guess the stripe length is about 2 feet. To 4
Oh,
feet.
really?
Right. Yeah.
Because you experience it so fast.
Exactly. Because as they're moving through it, they don't really have a sense as to how they're moving through the world.
Right.
Because it's so calm in your vehicle, right? It doesn't feel like 70 miles an hour.
No,
but it is.
Depending on your vehicle, I guess.
True enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certain vehicles don't feel as comfortable. Well, that's interesting, So there we are with
mine feels like you're going 70 in idle. It sounds that way, at least. If you close your eyes, you could think you're going 70. Mine just sounds like it's overheating as soon as you crank it.
Right. The sound experience in itself being an interesting thing.
Sorry, Rob, you were going to another topic.
No.
I was just going to ask something about. Did we already cover this maybe on another episode? But there was a research paper done at one point. I'm trying to remember the actual connection, so we could look it up. But it was based on the question: do bats process sound as vision in their brain?
Right.
Do they create a visual image of the sonar picture?
Right.
Or do they keep that mental process in an auditory format, and we just need to imagine it in a visual format to be able to express it?
Right.
And I don't remember where they landed on it, but I just love that
it's a great question.
Concept, that question, because if your brain is actually using, it's our language to speak in terms of images, primarily, and to think and imagine in terms of images. But for bats, who have hyper detail, spatial awareness and all kinds of communication they can do, and everything is auditory and sonar, what does that actually look like? What does it feel like? Right? What does it feel like to be a bat? To process the information auditorily,
it's really
without the image.
I like that a lot. I think that's a really good
that is interesting
kind of comparison to the whole thing. It's just and therefore aren't all senses kind of the same in that respect?
Subjective.
Yeah, which I think is kind of a definite. But anyway, speaking of fruit, what 5 fruits would you keep if you had to move to a desert island?
Well, I can tell you right now, kiwi is out.
All right.
No kiwis for me. I'm out.
It might be easier to say what you will keep. I think there's more.
I'm just gonna say right now, just
okay.
Blacklisted from mine is kiwi.
Is avocado a fruit?
I believe so. It's got that pit,
Definitely taking avocado.
Yeah, me too. It's coming along. That's coming.
I think I'd like blueberries.
I think that makes sense.
Tomato.
Yeah, see, that's another one. You got to take that.
Definitely.
Right now, I'm not 100% on the blueberry, on the tomato and the avocado.
And banana, probably.
That's in competition for me too. I'm working this out as we go.
I would have to say I'm with you, except for the blueberries. I would say strawberries, and I would only take one berry. But strawberry is just if you get a good one, a big juicy, from a volume standpoint.
Fantastic.
And it's just one big bite, just satisfying chunk to.
But it has nowhere near the value of vitamins.
Yeah, but I'm already getting avocados and tomatoes in the deal, so I feel like that's giving me plenty of the good stuff. Because I'm also going to take, I think, probably pineapple, to be honest, as a luxury item for myself.
I think pineapple is a good idea.
Yeah, I want the trees, right? I want coconut and pineapple trees, so I'm just going to take those two in the mix, because what the fuck are you doing on a desert island if you don't have palm trees?
Yeah, it would suck, huh? But maybe you could have
a bunch of blueberry bushes on your desert island and no palm trees? What the fuck desert island is
pineapple. I'm okay with the blueberry desert island. That sounds okay, dude.
pineapple isn't palm tree, but coconut. I mean, there's got to be other palm trees besides coconut, right?
So we got to have like
there's.
So theoretically, you don't have to choose coconut in order to have palm trees.
All right, so because I don't need
because you have like palm seed, palm oil.
I would go.
I appreciate your strict adherence to the rules of this, query. Yeah, I think we should give you the, latitude to work on this without coconut.
All right, so I'm going banana, avocado, tomato, pineapple, and strawberry.
Nice. And Bjorn's argument is that blueberry is a superfood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love that no one's even mentioned apples, and that's like just such a huge.
And then they just came out with the Cosmic Crisp.
Cosmic Crisp. Right. New, yeah.
You heard about that.
So
everybody knows about
that. Like we don't.
How does everybody know about
any of them on the island?
So Rob, what's your choice?
I think I might be with Mishek. Well, wait. Let's see. Tomato and avocado for sure. No way around it. Potatoes aren't fruit, right?
No.
So I got So and I think part of this is that you only get these 5, but they're the best always. They're always perfect.
Right. Yeah, they have to be ideal versions
all the time. Yeah.
And you have
if you only get rotten avocados, what's the
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So tomato, avocado. I like where you're going with the blueberries, Bjorn. Like they're not theoretically something I like eat all the time, but they're always a delight, and they are a superfood. And if you had an abundant amount of perfect ones, just like a perfect strawberry, I mean, there's something to be said. And even fewer seeds to deal with than a strawberry in a certain respect, which is kind of handy. So
I don't worry about seeds in either of those berries.
I got it. Go ahead. I might have to change one of my places, though, now that you described it that way.
I like, but what's the rest of it? Where are you going?
Well, so I think I'm with you on blueberry, right? I think that leads me into blueberry. So I got 3 now, right? Tomato, avocado, blueberry. I like pineapple. I think that's a good idea. Perfect pineapple all the time. It's really good for you. Really it's delicious. It's versatile. You could use it in sauces.
Mixed drinks.
Yes. So I would keep that guy. And then, I want to give it to banana, but I feel like I'm overlooking, like lime is fantastic. Yep. Lemon is great. Oranges are good. Apple, and that's not even counting things.
I'm just gonna say none of us have mentioned a melon, and I'm just gonna say now that we're talking about a perfect version of it,
watermelon.
Like the delta to pineapple's credit, to be fair to pineapple for a second, there's just not a very big delta between a bad pineapple and a great one. They're all pretty good.
Yeah,
like it's got to be spoiled to be a bad pineapple.
But a really good watermelon.
But a perfect watermelon.
Yeah.
That's serious. And talk about volume, fellas.
That's true. So here
are we not including pumpkins in this mix?
The way
when we talk about volume, now we're
that's a squash though. It's not a fruit.
Okay.
Squashes aren't fruits. Oh yeah, they're veggies, right? They're vegetables.
I don't know what they are, but they're just squashes.
I'm sure they're not.
Other side of the tracks.
They don't seem like fruits to me. Mm-hmm. But here's what I was thinking when you gave this idea out there. I was thinking, what would I want to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Tomato. For breakfast, bananas and blueberries sound really good. Like one or each other day, mix them up, add them to some like locally harvested granola. Next thing you know, you're using like old tomato seeds as your granola. You're gonna get real creative here, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then. And because you got so many tomatoes, you can literally like take the tomatoes just for the seeds, dry them out, and use them as your granola because there'll be plenty more tomatoes.
When we include one fruit, do we include every possible variety of that fruit? Because that's a different consideration.
Yeah, you have to.
Right, and when you say tomato, do you get all the heirloom, Roma, you get the whole spectrum of all the varieties?
No, I guess it would only make sense if you could only get one.
Grape and the cherry.
And you can't have both.
Because if you're doing, because
good question.
For one thing, like avocado is kind of out in that sense because just from a use standpoint, all varieties of tomatoes, all varieties of apples, now we're talking. I want all varieties of grapes. Now I'm thinking very differently.
Well, I'm glad you've told us.
You know what I mean? Because who thinks about cucumbers at a time like this? There's only one kind.
But that's a veggie, I think.
Right? There's hella kinds of cucumbers.
Fuck that.
Bro.
There's like 9 million types of grapes. And
however, cucumber, I believe, is a vegetable.
Yeah, it doesn't fly on the fruit train.
A flying train.
Fly on the fruit train. The fruit flies on the fruit train.
So we're on this desert island in our minds. I'm wondering,
It's not gonna be a desert if it's
there's been a lot of talk today with this impeachment shit about the founders and stuff, and in particular, like how they were kind of like, well, man, we had this other shit going over there with the king and whatnot, and it sucked for these reasons, so we want to make this new government and this new nation, and let's set it up. And we talk about this a lot, like making our own, but like, how would it really be done? Yeah, like in this day and age, because those people are seen as heroes now, you know what I mean? But we're, I guess, like, you know what I mean? Like they would have been considered.
Well, there's one key main kind of difference is you can't even make, they didn't do it then actually, they just made the claim, but you can't even make the claim now of discovering a new piece of property.
That's not claimed already by someone else.
Yeah, like there's a pretty clear picture of everything that you can claim.
Do you think Canada would want to do this with us?
I think so. I think they'd entertain it.
We'd say, hey, could we get a piece of Canada? You got a lot of.
We'll start with, hey, we obviously bring a lot to the table, so we don't even need to spend a lot of time.
Clearly.
The question would be you guys bring it to the table.
Yeah.
To make this worth our time.
Exactly.
And I would
tax incentives.
Right.
Which province has
like
the best
we can
tax
start
rate.
this without you, Canada. Frankly, we don't need you.
Once we get it set up,
land. It's a lot of
but then it would be ours, I think. And I'm fine with being
Canada
surrounded. No, this piece of Canada. We don't want the whole thing. Just no.
Let's not rule it out. Let's not rule out all of it.
Okay, I don't want to rule it out entirely, but I'd just say that sounds like a lot of work. Like that'd be taken on.
I just think we should ask for all of it to start, and we'll take it from there.
Well, there might be a negotiation.
Starts.
I could appreciate that.
Like maybe we should ask Canada for all of North America, and start from there.
Well, that works too. But in the end, all I really want is just a modest little chunk. It doesn't have to have states and stuff. Just a modest chunk for,
you would take Toronto,
like half of British Columbia.
That doesn't even need to be that big. Like, I'm talking.
You just want a lot in Canada.
But a sovereign,
like a half acre.
It doesn't matter where. I just figured the Canadians might be cool enough to let it happen. But a sovereign micronation. These are things we've talked about that micronations.
Yeah.
But to create our own micronation and just say like, here we stand.
You're saying in a world where we haven't already created Flawedcast, the Flawed Nation.
Right. That is true. Sometimes I forget we live in this flawed nation that we created.
You mean in some other scenario where we didn't already have that to bring to the table?
Yeah, where I didn't have like followers like the Bhagwan.
Right.
If I can figure out how to buy that neighboring property, I think it's a sizable enough area to call its own country.
Do you think we can do it? Wait till a Democrat goes into office, and then we'll try.
Right. Yeah. I'm just gonna quietly make my own declaration, submit my papers to no powers that be in particular.
Oh man.
But still have hella signs up that say welcome to the micronation.
Exactly. You're now entering Bjornistan or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The 5% nation of Cassioton.
Bjornberg.
Bjornenberg. Ooh.
Bjornenberg.
The Bjornenberg Gate.
Yep, you'd have that. Well, I think we should really try to do that.
We have a festival every year in Bjornenberg called Burning Man.
Burning Man, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll be in attendance.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I'm thinking. So I think like musical people in general probably have like a lot of wires. I got a lot of wires.
Oh, yeah, so many wires.
I got hella wires. Box after box.
I got backup wires to my broke backup wires.
And adapters and all that stuff. You know what I mean? and I was over here doing like sorting through them, looking for a certain one that I knew vaguely like where in the tangled universe it might exist, and like found it and was having to like rescue it from the fucking clutches of the rest of the wires. And the baby was there, and he's just like watching me do it, and I was like, all right, well, see, I'm taking this cable and trying to get it out. I have all these cables, and I was like explaining to him what was going on. And it struck me that by the time he's old enough to really even care, there won't be wires anymore.
Yeah.
And he's gonna laugh like fucking crazy.
Yeah.
To think, oh, my dad used to have, like, people will be like, oh, remember wires? And he'll be like, do you remember wires? My dad had so many wires.
No,
like, this guy was like a wire hoarder. Oh.
You'll still be the guy with hella wires because you will have all this old
vintage
audio
wires
equipment.
Rob's vintage wires.
Wires.
Yeah, requires wires. That's an album name. Or even a band.
Requires wires.
Yeah.
Damn, that's.
Hey, did you know it's the 20th anniversary, or it was a week ago, of the WTO riots in Seattle? That was interesting.
That happened on Jay-Z's birthday.
No, that was November 30th, which was last week. That was.
Oh, Jay-Z's birthday was today?
December 4th.
He's 50 now.
Yeah.
50, dog.
So they say.
Happy birthday, Jay-Z.
Yeah, man. Should we call him? Is it too late to call him?
He said, he should be available, but he might have other shit.
He's older now, so he might not be.
Late. That's probably it. That's what he meant.
We'll do it next week. Yeah.
I think you're right. Did you hear about what? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious if you heard one of the women, or the woman who was one of 4 witnesses or experts during the impeachment thing today. She was
Carlin.
Yeah, Carlin, and she's dope. But she said, therefore the president may be able to name his son Barron, but he can't make his son a Baron. And she was like making the point, and then people got really upset about it. And then Melania Trump even tweeted angrily about it while the shit was still going on. And so then Professor Carlin apologized for it on the same day in the hearing. It's crazy. Our world works in this way. You know what I mean? Where there's like a hearing in Washington, and there's the rest of the world that can comment on it. You know what I mean?
In real time, and influence the president to comment on it. Which will cause the hearing to comment on the president's comments on the hearing.
So he's there all the time.
If that happens like more than 3 times, do you think like some sort of weird ricochet / like overload occurs? And
well, I mean,
like this, he's the CPU crashes
the proceedings by doing that.
Well, he's demonstrating obstruction of justice.
Yeah, he did it last week too.
Well, this was Melania.
Oh, Melania did it this time, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't bring my son into this. Is that what she said?
Yeah. And it
sounds just like her. It sounded just like her.
By the way, have you seen an image of Barron lately?
Yeah, I did.
Can we bring one up for the global audience here?
Yeah.
To just show them the human being who they're speaking of.
I think Google might know where to find one.
Yeah. No, I just saw like a really good one earlier. And
Google just answered me when I said, "Hey Google."
Oh, that's right.
Did you know, by the way? I don't know if Siri does this, but Google has thought about when their products really suck and how to respond to them. Because I got so mad at my phone the other day when I was in New Orleans and I was trying to use it as like GPS tracking, and it's sitting on the dash and I'm trying to do voice commands and whatever. Yeah. And it was just awful. It was just a terrible experience. And at some point in anger, I screamed at my phone, "Hey Google, you fucking suck." And no, actually, let me see if it'll. Hey Google. Hey Google, you fucking suck. You fucking suck.
If I was a vacuum cleaner, this would be good news. I wish I was a vacuum cleaner.
they built in like hundreds of responses for you yelling at this thing
hilarious
to try to diffuse whatever is happening in the middle of it. And what I found out is I screamed at this thing over and over again because I was so mad and it was giving me a relief, that if you scream at it enough, it'll bring up a report that the guy, the recording says, would you like to send a report to our
that's actually kind of cool.
Wow. And so I recorded a message and like just screamed at the thing. It's like, cool, we'll send it in. Thank you.
Do you see my
That's
screen?
responsive.
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Well then, you're about to.
Baron's about to break the internet.
Well, I don't think it's that interesting, but damn it, it's on this full screen shit. Start sharing, please.
I mean,
it won't share if you're in a full screen.
My personal description of him is young vampire.
Yep, that makes sense.
That
adds up?
That's what I see.
Are we seeing it?
He's the type of
Bobby,
kid who looks like
it'll
he
only
might
allow you to share the screens that aren't full screen, so you have to take the Chrome browser or the browser off of full screen.
Well, that's a lesson for all our users out here.
Yep, true story, guys. It's a limitation in Skype that they refuse to fix.
And they call this high tech.
I mean, it's like it's pretty high in the sense, like it's like they're kind of stoned tech,
right?
I would say. You know what I mean? Like it's not like hyper tech; it's stoned. It's like kind of lazy and dumb.
So we still can't see this screen.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Nope, I still can't.
No,
see
we still can't see it, and that's
this is just crazy. I mean, there's a point in life when you say
it's wild, wacky shit.
No wonder,
I just want to be enchanted with the vision of Baron once more.
I'm literally on the edge of my seat.
You never saw it, right? My screen never allowed people to see it. Well, I think we gotta, because it thinks we're sharing. I'm gonna stop sharing, and then I'm gonna start sharing.
You're not sharing.
Nope.
Share application window. Nope, not letting me. Well, let's not do that anymore then.
Yeah,
look it up.
Everybody riveting.
Yourselves or something.
I'm glad we did that. That was riveting.
That was great. A lot of effort.
Seems like the kind of kid who tortures animals. I wouldn't be surprised if Melania is constantly fielding his requests for another cat and being like, "No, honey,
so
you've already had 20 cats this year."
Right.
But
what if he is the one that grows up to be like the sensitive journalist activist out of the family?
And what if he becomes the anti-Trump? What if he changes his middle name to Anti and calls him Baron Anti-Trump and goes on a crusade to undo all the evil of his sister and dad?
What if he changes his name to The Truth About?
The Truth About.
His name is Baron the Truth About Trump.
Baron the Truth About.
No, his
Baron
name
the Truth
is
About Trump.
Yeah.
And his middle name is Truth About.
I think you could do that. Anyone could do that. That's really nice. The Truth About Rude,
Yeah. Yeah.
Truth About Jones,
Truth About Jones sounds like a porn figure, like a 70s porn figure. It's like he's like Shaft's next door neighbor.
Oh man,
Shaft walks out in the morning. What's up, Truth About Jones?
The original Truthy.
So at this point in the cycle, we gotta call things. We gotta use words like cycle. Who's your candidate?
I'm flying Yang style. I'm going down with the ship.
I would vote for Yang at this juncture, and I would vote for Bernie, and I would vote for Warren. If one of those three was up, right, as the candidate, I would vote for him. I don't think I'll cast a vote for a moderate Democrat. I can't. If it's Biden, I'm all the way done with them.
What if it's Bloomberg?
Bloomberg is Meshach's hinting at Bloomberg running as an independent eventually.
Too late.
He declared as a Democrat?
Well, he's running as a Democrat now, yeah. Full on. He's already spent... Kamala Harris dropped out yesterday. Bloomberg has already spent more on the campaign in 10 days than she did the whole time.
Oh, no question. So Bloomberg announced when he announced his campaign. So I think we talked about this because our podcast started in 2015, and Bloomberg did an exploratory campaign for the 2016 election in which he spent like $30 million to explore the idea of starting a campaign. And when he announced his media budget for this one, it was in the neighborhood of $300 million. I researched it very quickly. In 2016, Hillary Clinton spent $120-something million on media. So when you look at what he's able to do just from a pure money standpoint, he's going to be able to last longer. He's going to be able to permeate all kinds of markets with incredibly targeted ads. He can be hyper specific about all kinds of things that other candidates can't be because they can't afford to be targeted in that way and spend money in that way. And he can specifically position himself against whichever candidate he wants in whichever market he needs to compete against. So in Seattle, we might only be seeing, the sort of references in our bubble to Bloomberg against whoever is trending in Seattle in the area at the time.
Right.
That's the kind of money he's going to be able to spend in this process. So my point about the independent thing is, if something happened to Bloomberg, say, for example, hypothetically, like what happened to Bernie when Hillary got the nomination, where it was very clear the DNC just, pushed him out and said, sorry, it's Hillary. If that kind of thing were to happen to Bloomberg, he has enough money independently without erasing anything else to just keep going. And I think the calculus that he made, my suspicion is that the calculus he has made is not that he can garner 51% of the vote. It's that he can split the vote in three and garner enough of the third to control the situation.
Well,
he is possible. Enough of a moderate in between the Democrats and Republicans.
You're saying that's his backup plan, though?
No, I think that's his long-term plan because I don't think he expects to be.
So it comes with the presumption that he would. Oh, you're saying he spent $30 million last cycle, to find out he can't win the Democratic nomination, but that in itself
against Hillary with Trump, right?
Right, and presumably you're saying he still can't because he's in the Democratic thing, but you're saying he's not expecting to win it, right?
No. I'm saying I don't know if he expects to win the Democratic nomination,
right?
But I think he has made the calculus to specifically plan for being able to afford to complete his campaign and win enough of the vote as an independent, even if he doesn't have the Democrats. Like, I don't think he would have gotten.
So it's a backup plan. Yeah.
Unless he was ready to put enough money to win it into the race.
I mean, it's feasible when you have that kind of money. We got some breaking news.
If no candidate receives a majority of electoral votes, the House of Representatives elects the president from the three presidential candidates who received the most electoral votes.
Boom.
Each state delegation has one vote. Each senator would cast one vote for vice president.
Wait. Sum that up.
So the House of Representatives elects the president from between the three presidential candidates who received the most electoral.
But you're saying so this is a third party.
If no candidate receives 51%
of the top three, or just if there's three
amongst those three, it looks like each.
But how did we get to three?
Delegation has one vote, and each senator would cast one vote for vice president from amongst those three.
Wait, out of which three? That's what we're not getting. How do we?
So say it's Bloomberg,
the Senate does the VP and the states do the pres.
It's not fully clear here. It says each state delegation has one vote. I'm guessing that's each House of Representatives state. So Washington would have one vote, I think is how this is being said, and the representatives from Washington would have to meet and come to an agreement on who they were voting for the Washington vote.
I'm not clear on the scenario that triggers.
Yeah, me either. That's what I'm trying to say. Is how did we get to
no candidate receives a majority of electoral votes?
Back up for a second, because if no candidate in most cases, first of all, what would be a majority? Because how would no candidate?
Two
That's
seven.
like there's a tie. Okay. Oh, so that magical
So in
number.
the final
So what if that
tally,
somehow happens?
it was split. If in the final tally it was split more than two ways, basically, it would have to be split more than two ways.
Yeah.
That would require this kind of scenario, and in which, like, I'm trying to think of how that would even mathematically be possible.
If it's like 180,
system,
180, 180.
Well, right. It's what the two-party system is designed to avoid.
Exactly, but
Right.
That's what is so lovely.
But it's what
about
I think, is the calculus ultimately that I'm saying.
So
Bloomberg made.
If that happens, apparently the House has some say in, and so do the senators as far as vice president. And the choice is made from the three highest earners. Say there's even a candidate that takes one state. Say there's a candidate that takes California. There's 5 horses in this race. There's another candidate that takes Illinois. And now the rest of the country is split between 3 others.
I have to get more wine, but I like where you're going with this.
I just think if Bloomberg can afford the kind of media budget that he's talking about, the only thing that could really hurt him is him. You put him on a stage and he says the wrong thing, that's still possible. Right? Yeah. But even if he says the wrong thing at the wrong time, he's got enough money to rebound from that if he has enough time to rebound from it. So, and we've seen Trump with a grab him by the pussy quote, right? So we've seen what the country is capable of overcoming in the middle of a campaign to still stick by their guy. But I don't think Bloomberg is an idealist.
He doesn't have
candidate.
Guys like that.
Yeah, he doesn't. It's not an idealist candidate.
Squad.
But I also think that he's first of all, I think he's gonna be a boring candidate mostly. But if he can afford the kind of campaign we're talking about, then he can afford really good speechwriters. He can afford really good media people, really good, advertising people who can write zingers and come up with the right phrase at the right time and help him kind of craft the message. And if he does that in the sort of political strategist kind of way, the right way, and if he has any kind of public charisma, which is yet to be seen, right? We haven't seen him in any kind of meaningful debate and an exchange that requires him to have any real emotional intellectual take on a national scale, right? You might have seen him to get the speech here and there or whatever, but people don't really know what makes him tick.
Well,
he can still fucking himself up in all those ways.
He's just another rich white guy name to, I think, a lot of America who's unfamiliar with him or his policies.
Right.
And the more out front he becomes with all this money he's going to be spending, in my opinion, I'm fine with it because guess whose votes he's taking? Centrists. He's taking Biden votes and, away. And that's
I think he might be. Yeah, I mean, I think he's calculating a lot of things. I think he's calculating taking centrist votes, taking I think he's going to lean on his Jewish heritage. I think he'll lean on a New York businessman thing and try to appeal to the conservative, mid-leaning, kind of moderate conservative.
I don't think I don't think leaning on Jewish is the motto in America, even though it's 2020. Bernie, I don't think even doesn't. I mean, he'll address it. He'll, I've caught 1 or 2 clips of him addressing, saying that he's proud of his heritage and ethnicity, and and he'll be excited to be the first Jewish president. You know what I mean? But he doesn't. That's not a central. He doesn't bring light to that unless it's addressed.
Yeah, and I think Bloomberg's in it. I think Bloomberg's going to have to address it in a different way than Bernie did. Because Bernie's also been a public figure in a way that's given him a platform to kind of dodge that. He's been fairly religiously agnostic in his policies and his approach to all kinds of things. Whereas I think Bloomberg is just going to have to tell a public story that's a little bit different because he doesn't have the public service credibility that Bernie has. Bloomberg has I'm a fucking rich ass dude and it's because I'm good at making money. And that's my story, and by the way, I'm also good at running shit, is going to be the story. And like, I think from the sort of moral perspective, the international and international and domestic policy kind of stuff, and like, whatever, I think he's going to play the card that I'm a better businessman than Trump, and Trump ran on being a businessman. I'm certainly a better businessman than all the Democratic candidates. Mm-hmm. I've run cities more sophisticated than anything they've run. And from a moral standpoint, I know how to like make the right decisions, because you can't dig up enough dirt in my past compared to these assholes, to whatever. So I think he's just going to kind of try to play that centrist card. Like, I'm just better with money. I'm better with leadership. And I'm not a fucking scumbag. Prove me wrong.
But I just don't feel like he's taking out of Warren or Sanders' bag.
Something would have to happen to one of those for Bloomberg, I agree, to win. But I'm not at all ruling out something happening to one of their campaigns. There's just something about this whole thing. I have a hard time seeing that Bernie and Warren continue building steam and momentum and riding a wave in the light of everything else going on in the public kind of ethos right now with the impeachment and all the messiness in Russia. And, I'm just not, I hope for it. I want it, but I'm just not convinced that there's not some crazy fucking left turn coming for their campaigns. Because for one thing, I'm not convinced that the DNC actually wants either one of them.
They don't want either of them.
Right. So if the DNC looks at Bernie, Warren, or Bloomberg, so that's what I'm saying is like I when you start factoring in how the parties are looking exactly, but if Biden gets just destroyed in this scandal, and it turns out to be a bunch of like B or C level kind of candidates, Bernie, Warren, or Bloomberg, and we're about to have to go heads up against Trump. And by the way, in the middle of all this, he's just survived impeachment. Like, I just don't see Bernie or Warren being their choice.
Well, that's very possible. I think it's easy also to underestimate the older generations as well as the younger in certain ways. But I feel like I kind of feel so progressive myself that I almost don't believe that there's this moderate Democrat group that would be like, yeah, Biden, or yeah, Bloomberg, to me it just doesn't seem like, what? That's what you're aspiring to? It just seems weird. It's like, that seems like what you just settle for if you absolutely have to.
But I think what it appeals to is people who don't want to think that much about politics. They want to think.
Well, I don't know. I think
the simplest
No, I think what you said is deeply held type of fear, especially in older generations, where they just do not believe. They're so jaded that the idea that ever we could just get someone great has just been taken out of them. They don't believe it. So the best. And I think Obama was kind of an example of he almost seemed like it, and then in a lot of ways he did well in many ways, but he wasn't in any way perfect either. And
I also think that this is a generation or a group that has a pretty diverse mix on who's on which side of the aisle. There's a fair mix of really conservative older folk and some more liberal people too. And I can imagine a discussion that broaches the topic of, say, Medicare for all. Mm-hmm. And the conservative retort immediately is and how are you going to pay for it? Mm-hmm. It's not going to work. And them leaning back on what the candidates have been supplying them, not having a ton of really clear, good responses to that. The candidates who have come with those have not made it easy to get into that debate with somebody and be like, no, you pay for it with boom, 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 and boom.
Well, Bernie kind of has, I feel like.
Bernie far more so than Warren.
Yeah, way more.
Yeah. But I guess I could just see people losing that private debate with their other respected peers who share differing views
Yeah.
And therefore going kind of
really which debate? I didn't follow
about the capacity to afford
Medicare for all.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So, and then reeling that back and saying, oh yeah, but Biden's wise and he'll make the good choices, and he's still in my camp on my Democrat side, but he's not going to shake anything up. They don't want anything to get shaken up.
Well, and
guess
you
what
know
the fuck Trump did.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and so here's an interesting thing on that level, because I think I could say, with talking to my parents even about it, it's like I think they are old enough and in need of or counting on medical coverage enough that it's a very real topic. You know what I mean? It's not like, and it's something where, because my dad was saying something to the effect of like, all right, let's say Medicare for all is enacted somehow, right? And he's like, well, what happens like 4 years later and a Republican maybe comes into office and then like repeals Medicare for all or something? Like, what happens to people like him, you know, or whatever? And I was like, that's a fair question. I said, but to me, and I think this is kind of what your point was, Bjorn, like I look at it like the Republicans already tried to repeal Obamacare and coverage or guarantees for people with pre-existing conditions in 2017 or whatever, 18, whatever year it was. It's already underway. They're not waiting for us to get Medicare for all to try to take away coverage from people. They're actively doing it now. So I'm kind of like, my mentality is we need to, push for something much, much stronger, because we know it's harder to take it away. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And they're not going to go after the Affordable Care Act again. Not in the way they did right off the bat in the early Trump presidency, and then weren't able to reel it back. And the response from America was such that, there's plenty of people that are going to hate on the Affordable Care Act, but there's also plenty of people who benefit massively from it. And those people are going to be vehement in pushing their experience to the public and getting you voted out of office if you fuck with this thing that's life-saving.
Well, that's where I think you can kind of start to conceptualize some of that mentality of a moderate Democrat, for example, because and again, though, in my mind, it's out of fear, right? It's like I have a reason to fear something being that I see as, vital to my survival being a negotiation chip, you know what I mean? And therefore, something that doesn't rock that table is going to appeal, you know what I mean? Because I don't see it that same way. I'm like I said, I'm like, you got to go for the big thing. But another thing that I think is worth just exploring, and this is kind of like what I think frustrates me about this kind of topic, is it's like, all right, we'll argue forever about the cost and whether you're being honest or not about the cost and whose math is right and all this stuff, you know what I mean? But we don't really talk about like, what does it really mean? Because I think even as a supporter of something like for Medicare for all, I'm curious what people's vision is for a world where relatively suddenly an entire industry's worth of people has nowhere to work. You know what I mean? What do you do? And I'm not saying that's like so
like medical insurance
industry, like the people who work in that, in the whole field of the private.
They have nowhere to work? I don't understand.
Because under this Medicare for all, there would be no private insurance.
Oh, so you're saying just people who work for healthcare insurance companies?
Yeah, but that's not a small number of people.
No, I got you.
And those people are voters, and it's something that I think if you can't satisfy that question, then anyone who's in that industry is probably against it, right? Just off the bat. So I think it would be practical to have an answer to that question and to lead with that answer. But I'm also just curious, what would be best to do as a society if an industry, and I don't know how many people are in that industry, but I can be certain it's tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands, yeah, absolutely.
So do you just transfer them into like a government equivalent job? Because that seems inefficient and that wouldn't work.
Well, there definitely will be space in operating the new mechanism
right
of the new government healthcare that will require a lot of workers who know the ins and outs of how the billing cycles go from hospitals. You're still having bills developed. You're still having money at the end of the table in the doctor's Benz as he drives out. He's not going to lose his Benz over this shit.
Right, but I think, well...
But along the way, you're just changing who's footing the bill, ultimately. And they're going to be able to negotiate a much better way to interact with hospitals with the removal of any competition of private insurers. I mean, I think that's the incentive for the government to be able to get really good deals again. Like, generic prescription drugs that are affordable for people who have actually terminal illnesses and need these things, but can't afford $700 pills and the likes.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess Medicare, from what I understand, does not pay nearly as much. Like, basically, it's got such a huge membership that no healthcare provider can really afford to not take it. But they make like a fraction on Medicare stuff is what they do on whatever's not Medicare, I guess. At least that's what I was reading in some Politico article or whatever. So if that's the case, I think coupled with the idea that there'd be positions needed, but it's like now it's one entity, so it's definitely requiring fewer employees, and it may need the hospitals and the doctors to work differently, because if all of a sudden everybody's at that lower rate, then you know what I mean? Like the hospitals and the doctors are definitely not going to be getting as much, so the doctor won't have as many. That's why he's fighting against it too, or she's fighting against it in a lot of ways. Many doctors and healthcare professionals are like against this stuff because it's like fucking with where they get their check.
It's like, I get that. I think that the people who are the middlemen right now, in the pharmaceutical and the insurance industries, are the ones who are cashing the biggest checks on any side of this coin. There's a lot of doctors who are doing really well. If you stack all that up, maybe it's equivalent, as far as physicians take, and maybe nurse practitioners, etc. But the people who, own major insurance providers and healthcare systems, Kaiser Permanentes and stuff like that, and the pharmaceutical producers are the ones who are cashing the biggest checks in this equation. And what I like the idea of is the government being able to say, there aren't options on who you're going to go through. You're going to sell those to us, and you're going to sell them to the services and the materials to us at this price, because it's fair. And I mean, what in Sicko, he was interviewing doctors in the UK with families living in comfortable brownstones, and he says, "Hey, man, these doctors in the US, like, they're used to making $400,000, $600,000 a year, and having 3 homes and Well, you're not getting that here." And he's like, "No, but I'm living a comfortable, happy life, and I don't need a new sports car. I'm raising my family."
Well, that's arguable. I think a lot of people say you do need a new sports car.
Yeah, but needing a new sports car is everything that's wrong
true
with our world.
If you already have a really new sports car, then you might not need a new one. But if you have an old one, you might be in the need category.
You could quickly escalate to need.
I think like one thing that's interesting about the healthcare debate, and like I think a lot of these national debates is like what to me feels like a straw man in the conversation. Not that you're presenting this, Rob, but it gets presented in a way that I've been trying to kind of think through how to say it. So, like the example you asked about, Rob, is like, if you change the healthcare system, a group of people to consider are the people who are just sort of the middlemen working in health insurance, right? And they just happen to be in that industry. They're not the leeches. They're not the whatever.
I don't know. Some of them might be. Some of them
might be, but
I'm
like
sure
that's not the accusation, right? It's just
Right.
that like there's a group of Americans that are already working in this industry, didn't
Right.
necessarily do anything wrong to have that job, and now this industry is going to shift. But like, I feel like to a certain extent, that's an unwinnable argument because the logic of that is that if the country makes a decision about some program, first of all, that's going to by nature generate a bunch of jobs, and people are going to do those jobs for some period of time. And if the country decides that it's in its best interest to change that program and those people are now out of a job, I don't think it's necessarily in our best interest to always factor in that we have to now be a cost plus analysis for all the jobs changing.
I'm not saying that.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like to a certain, like just as a reaction to that, though, I think because number one, there are plenty of industries that get changed in ways that are uncontrollable, and people get affected in all the same ways that are, like that happen every day. Why would that not happen to any other industry that government happens to be involved in?
Market.
And number two, it's still back to if the purpose of this, and this particular instance is a good example, if the purpose of this government program is to facilitate something that's better for all, including those people who might be out of a job because of this program, but now they all have better health insurance because of it, those kinds of things. That seems like exactly the kind of trade-off that federal government was to be making.
But I'm not arguing against, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying
totally.
I actually believe in the concept of Medicare for all very much, but I think, and I guess maybe this is where I'm going with it, is it's like, I think because I hear a lot of, especially that moderate kind of voice that we're talking about, kind of like, well, Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden, they're talking about Medicare for anybody who wants it. You know what I mean? And private insurance for whoever wants that. Mm-hmm. How can you argue? There's a lot of people who I think say, hey, I like that because it makes me less worried. Mm-hmm. But my argument would be, that sounds nice, except for that it means a weakened and more desperate healthcare industry survives. And it already has lobbyists, and it already fights fiercely against everything. Mm-hmm. That health insurance industry or whatever. So
you're saying death to the industry.
Well, you have to. And I think that like it's one or the other, because they are not going to suddenly just tap out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're gonna double down regardless of the employees and everything else. But that's what I'm saying. To me, it seems not like important to justify exactly what happens to these jobs, otherwise the policy isn't sound, but rather to just address it because it is a reality of it. And if you don't have a plan for it that you communicate, like Bjorn's saying, people are going to lose debates, at home or whatever with somebody, and it just is an elephant in the room. It's just one of, many. So I just think, grab the bull by the horns.
The thing that this enables is thinking about the government taking care of health as a right. I'm thinking, and I'm not seeing any politicians really addressing it like this. Let's talk about future healthcare as being the type of healthcare you could only dream of. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about it being amazingly easy, fluid, at your need, comfortable. There's a local clinic where you've become friends with, Robert and Bianca, who work at the counter.
Bob and B.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Bob and BB.
They're a killer at trivia night.
Man,
you love my names. Anyway, they call you once a year and they're like, "Hey, it's time to schedule your physical.
Bobby!
Is there anything that we haven't talked to you? Want to make sure that your dental's good?
Hey,
you've been visiting the."
Hey, it's Rob down at the health shop.
Yeah.
Just wanted to give you a call and let you know that it's time for your physical. When you come over here, we're going to have drinks and pizza and all types of fun shit. So just let me know when a good time for you is, because the party's constantly going on over here.
Myrtle says hello. Yeah. And so
Myrtle.
But how hard is it for attached to like every community center, for there now to be a little clinic that's government, and that they get to know the 2,000 people that live nearby them.
That's how hard. It's a 7.
It's a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, no, 6.
I'd say it's very.
It's doable. A 7 out of 6.
6 out of 7.
Okay.
Such an odd number set.
No, 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10.
Okay.
You got me. You got me there.
6. Okay. Yeah, but like I think also just one other, just to put a nugget on top of that, is that isn't the idea of technology and growth and hyper convenience and hyper efficiency and all that kind of stuff, isn't the idea to eventually work us all out of jobs anyway? So isn't it kind of fighting against all of us to be trying to perpetuate job growth? Isn't that concept a contradiction in terms for what we are all imagining long term anyway?
If you're right, here's how
it's one thing like Andrew Yang is talking about the Detroit, car numbers and manufacturing being replaced by robots and whatever, and that's an easy like analog kind of example that we can all look at. When we look at things like this where whole industries are shifting on a turn of a pen,
here's your answer.
Congress, that's just going to keep happening, and the goal of it is that so that we don't have the need for jobs. That's what we're trying to do here. So
check it out. What you do is you tell society, this is just, I'm thinking off the top here. You say, look, you say everything you just said. We're headed to this automated, whatever type of future. And there's certain jobs and industries that we're not going to need anymore. And one of them is the healthcare industry. We're not going to need this any longer. But we care about those people. And since this is a step in the direction of evolution, it would be wrong to try to retro-train them in another field, let's say. What they need to be is considered graduated from the workforce. And they're just going to retire at this age. They're going to tap into the social programs and so on because they're the first people to get there. And then the next industry that gets wiped out, we'll just say, okay, they graduated too. They made it. And then they'll be allowed at the top. So everyone just has to kind of wait their turn for their industry to die. And it would spur innovation for automation because
for any innovation?
It would spur
industry?
Spur innovation because what would happen is it would make people go, shit, I want to be out of this dumb industry soon. Here's a way to automate it. And then it gets automated and then boom, they graduate. So it's a graduation.
Also, like the left turn of evolution, or whatever you want to call it, like how evolutionary pressure leans one way and then the actual thing that survives is always something kind of strange. Like it's not really like a direct, like if you look at the dinosaur period, you would not predict that the things that were us kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like if this is all projecting, toward this concept of like just more government systems and more kind of like platforms on which humanity can kind of rise and keep, kind of layering on generationally more and more conveniences and efficiencies and blah, blah, blah. What if the left turn here is that people don't lose all their jobs and not have a job. People lose all their jobs and then end up, 2 or 3 or 4 generations from now, the normal person has hundreds of jobs throughout their life. And they just do stuff as needed. Like I drive for Lyft for 2 days a week, and I did that for a year and a half. And then during that time, I was also like, a bartender here and there. And like I provided this kind of service for my community out of charge. And like, what if that's the norm? Like, because that's kind of already the norm now to like a certain generation. But what if that actually becomes the economic norm for an entire society, right? Where you don't have career anything. You have people
I think that's
maybe specialized here and there. Like
that's happening or happened.
Right. But like in that world, do you really need to protect any industry or any specific skill set? Because everyone's working mini jobs.
Isn't necessarily that you have to protect that health insurance industry, though. It was more that you just have to acknowledge that it exists and then just have it worked in at some
totally. I don't mean to harp on it.
Into just how you talk about it, but it's like maybe it is just, you know, go find something else. Maybe it's here's another thing that, you know, there's going to be a lot of similar jobs in another field that's growing, or I don't know. But ultimately, I like the idea of it all coming down to robots doing shit, and it leads me to wonder, why can't we teleport yet?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's obviously Obama's fault.
You guys,
Yeah, I mean, someone.
You guys really definitely want robots to do all of it.
Most.
Name
Yeah.
Like-
something you don't want a robot to do.
Yeah. Because I'll tell you.
I want, like, cook food. I want to enjoy cook. I want to grow and cook my own food.
I think a lot of people would want to do that. That's like a fun. That's almost like art. Yeah. Robots, I don't think would take over leisure.
But I don't mind.
Cooking
I wouldn't mind eating food made by a robot.
I'd be okay with it.
I'm sure it'd be fine. Yeah. I think the thing is like,
scared the dog.
There's this sense of what the fuck are we gonna do with ourselves, and how useful is anybody? And we've talked about usefulness as an appropriate term.
Yeah,
having purpose in this world. We've spent like 10,000 years creating the different types of people that live in our world. And there's some of them that rush off to be physicists. And there's some people that are far happier working at a call center. And there's other people that really like doing physical things. People all have the capacity to do many things, but there are great differences within us. And some people have a knack for certain things that others don't. We have a lot of people in our society because I think genetically we've always found the need for that, especially in agricultural communities, to just be able to do hella hard labor.
Okay.
To just get out on the field and help me, you know, get the oxen yoke back on, you know, like hard ass work people. And that's 7 billion of those folks are going to be largely directionless in a future 9 billion world Earth where we're taken over by robots. And that's I mean,
ultimately, what are like the problem of purpose definitely arises if people are not needed to solve problems mentally or move shit around. If just solving regular problems and figuring shit out and moving shit around was just stuff that AI and robots did, right? You want to pluck berries, robots do that. You want to move a freight, robots do that. You want to like solve math problems, predict weather patterns, whatever, AI does that. We don't need people for solving problems, you know, with intellect or moving shit around. People just do whatever the fuck is left, right? Which is damn near nothing. But what is so bad about that?
Well, nothing. So what about a movie or a book?
So into it.
Well, I mean, wrong is in the eye of the beholder, you know. But what about
we just
a
don't
plot?
need as many people.
I'm not saying it's wrong.
I feel like that's a natural deterrent for population growth.
Okay, what if you have a plot of a movie or a book where you have a society that gets there? The AI and the robots are doing everything. They got it so dialed in that when your robot transportation vehicle breaks down, a robot mechanic fixes that, right? And that there's actually robots and AI continuing to pump out better and better robot transportation vehicles, right? Like, so your car and the technology behind it is just...
Well, if they haven't developed teleportation yet either, then what the fuck's the point, Rob?
Right. Well, okay, take another, maybe just right. Like your mattress. maybe your mattress then.
It's hard to argue with that.
Your mattress, you know, is not just great because robots made it with AI, but it's getting better all the time. They keep making better mattresses because the AI is in charge. So this world, right, where everything is so optimized.
Because we don't have to do anything, so we keep gaining weight, so the dead better get better.
But we unlocked the key to robots innovating on our behalf, right? Like we passed innovation over to the robots. And then one day, just like a virus or something, just instead of the robots like rising up, they all just every single robot everywhere that's doing everything for us just turns off, and we're just like, anybody know how to fix this? They're like, no, the robots built that. Like, you know, like they're the mechanics, they're the builders.
Yeah, they do everything.
I think that could be more likely how it would work out for our world. You know what I mean? Like we'd get to the height, just dizzying technology, and then we'd just play ourselves out by just that.
I got it. I think I got it. I love that. I think I got how the AI gets there, right? The AI starts getting so smart and self-sufficient, right? And it just puts all of us on this like dopamine and serotonin loop where like we don't know what the fuck is happening, and it just uses us for energy and whatever. And it starts like processing all the solutions for the biggest problems in the universe or whatever, and then realizes, oh shit, like I have all this knowledge and power and whatever, but like this is an infinite loop unless I have some kind of purpose, right? And all these humans had a purpose, and they were like evolving and whatever naturally. I need a purpose. So the AI thinks what I'll do is I'll discover my own gene that needs like the serotonin dopamine thing that all these humans, because maybe that'll give me purpose. It doesn't give itself the serotonin dopamine thing. It fucking goes to sleep, like overdoses on our drug.
And then this is like a Matrix world you've painted.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The AI god of it all overdoses.
Well, I like that, but it requires the sinister AI that put all the humans to sleep. And I'm just kind of proposing, what if it didn't even need to happen? Like, we just literally were like, wait, AI's over here saying he'll make new shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Why are we going to do it? Like, let's let it, do its thing. It's really good at it. You know what I mean? It's making fantastic.
What would you do, like, if you literally never had to work?
Well, I think, and I think this is the point to me, is I think most people would probably do a combination of things that would be artistic, communal, enjoyable. You know what I mean? Like do things like gather with their friends, make music, play games, sports, make food, grow vegetables, do all that kind of stuff. Like, I think if people didn't have to go, because, there was a time when work would have been gathering those things, right? Like, we need a goalpost for our game. Someone's got to go chop down a tree, right? Like, that's the work that you got to do in order to have that, but it pays off like kind of long term because now it's there. And it's like, once you have the food that you need for the allotted time and you have the resources and the other stuff, the fire or whatever you're going to, the wood for the fire, it's like, now those are the things you do, like fucking, just commune with your friends and with the environment and with yourself, right? Like, I think that's what people naturally, and all of our free time kind of works out. Is that
realistic though? Because like, it feels like that to a certain degree, isn't that celebration time an affect of the reality that humans know we have to work?
Well,
right? So since we know that most of our experience is toil and struggle and whatever, when we have those moments of respite and the fire is lit and we have some food in our bellies and everything is safe, that suddenly we're like, oh, we want to have some fun. And,
all right,
and that's like, because it's the exception to the rule, we've cherished it. But if that wasn't the exception and we could just do that all day long, would we actually get together around the fire that much?
Well,
I don't know.
So I think it's again more than that. It's like, so if you, I don't think ever that, let's say you've got to, okay, if you're desperate and you haven't gotten any food in a really long time, your group is just on the brink of starvation, hunting for that meat or gathering that whatever, seeing that crop fail or whatever it might have been, probably didn't make you happy. And it may have made you want to hang out and drown your sorrows in whatever alcohol was left or something like that later on. But when it was working well, you're still doing it with the people around you, right? Like, theoretically, we wanted to play soccer or whatever. We built the goal posts and the frame of it and the net, like I'm just speaking hypothetically, but whatever we did it probably together, and that was actually work, and it was fun, and it was with probably the same group of people that you go relax with. Maybe not everybody's into music or drawing like you, so when you want to go draw, you go do that with so and so or just by yourself. But I think that's human nature. You know what I mean? Is to do both, is to work, like almost to the work.
Well, I guess. I guess maybe that's my question.
Really, well, just let me put it this way: the work required to be a human is to get a consistent food supply, warmth, like food, clothing, and shelter, but not even really clothing, just food, shelter. That security, if you have that locked down, allows you basically to exist. That's all the necessary work that there is in life, other than whatever else piques your interest. Like, oh, I'd rather be warm on my feet when I have to go piss outside of the cave or whatever, like, so now I'm motivated to work, to innovate and create shoes or something, and then to make them and to try different versions. I don't know. I think
so. I guess that's the question, right? Is it in our nature because of the evolutionary nurture that's selected for that gene, right? Okay. Over time. In other words, do we all share the gene of a sort of inherent need or desire to work and have purpose and to do a thing and blah, 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 because that was required for humanity to breed useful products and build the society that we have. So we kind of naturally selected for motivated individuals who will stick to the task and finish it and blah, blah, blah. And if that evolutionary pressure was removed and work for produce in some way was no longer necessary in humanity for, let's say, 100 generations, right? For long enough that potentially the gene pool of humanity could change without that pressure, would we still have the impetus to work, to strive the same way we do? Would we still have?
Well, maybe not.
Could it be bred out of us?
You said like we do now.
Well, no, what I mean is you use the phrase human nature, and my question is it human nature as a result of the nurture of the need for work? And could that be
this whole need for work is not absolutely not human nature. There's nothing about needing to work. This is a societal thing that we've all adopted, this idea of working. There's people who go to work every day that do shit like translate things, that like read stuff online and translate it into another language, or do things that are nice but not necessary. And in some cases, people literally doing things that are completely inane. They know themselves. Their job is just a redundant, unnecessary, like grueling, pointless thing that exists in a weird industry full of people who are all just like certain industries, even like I hate to shit on it, but like HR, for example, it's like a group of people who said, we want to just turn this into an industry, basically. And we can kind of strong arm it, by being the safeguards of certain laws. And so like it's this quasi legal thing. But at the end of the day, in big, huge corporations, a lot of the time, these people, they're just literally adding hoops for people to jump through in a big, massive bureaucratic nightmare of a company. You know what I mean? So I think to assume that like that's in any way fulfilling anything other than the need to survive, and the fact that, I mean, it's very Ishmael and My Ishmael. I know Bjorn's read those books, but they talk about like the food being locked up somewhere else. And so all of a sudden your abilities to survive is dependent on society rather than something you can just guarantee for yourself. You know what I mean? So
as soon as the labor of survival turned into labor for, a trinket that you use to exchange for survival, and the threat of not having kind of a standardized access set or an accepted cultural access to those keys or those trinkets of survival meant you were outcasted and your survival was doubtful. And perhaps it's interesting homelessness on the West Coast in particular, in the face of this billionaire class that we have here, flies in the face of the fact that separating yourself from the accumulation of trinkets does not mean you won't survive.
Right. Even
people are quite alive.
Yeah.
They're finding access to the chemicals and the food sources that they need and want.
Yeah.
They're staying warm enough.
Well,
There's, you know what I mean? Like, maybe they want a little more of some things.
Well, I mean, there's probably a lot of people starving and dying too, but I think your point is that there's many people pulling it off, right?
Surviving without subscribing,
right,
to the system of trinket exchange,
right.
And I think that's kind of a powerful thought in this day and in this conversation, considering that only food, clothing, and shelter as a survival necessity was what we were after. But then RZA goes on to say, love, peace, and happiness. Total satisfaction is to achieve one goal in the scheme of things. He who works like a slave lives like a king.
Right.
There's this ethic of labor, and we've talked about this so many times. We recycle to this a lot. It's a lovely tale about what our society is, what we expect of each other, how we look at how each other works, and like the idea that we need to be super industrious. Like,
what about this?
That's such an esteemed value.
What if though you looked at that kind of a statement more as I don't know if this is the right word, but parable, like that's not the right word, but I guess I mean in the sense of like an actual reality that someone has experienced, and it's more of like, this is a piece of advice. Like, if you want to eat like a king, you're going to have to work like a slave or something, rather than there's necessarily, and I'm not saying this is what like RZA meant or whatever, I'm just saying, because for some people, and it's to me a very valid thing, I think most people really, you've probably worked hard at something, like you've wanted something and you've worked hard and you've gotten it. Maybe it's a physical item, maybe not, but I think anybody who's had that kind of experience might be able to say, there were times when I felt like giving up, or where I didn't think it was worth it, or various other things, and I pushed through, I persevered, and then lo and behold, I got it. Even back to the long game thing.
You have pride about it, and you feel good about yourself, and like, there's honor in that.
Well, what about even going back to the long game thing, when we were talking about like, at the end of the game, if you're losing really bad, it's not so fun. And I was saying, but what if like last minute the opponent forfeits or some sort of freak thing changes? That you feel even better for staying in for, right? So if you should have given up, if everyone else would have given up,
exactly,
but you believed against stupid odds, you know what I mean? And then you were right, it's even more valuable, at least in our society. So I'm not necessarily arguing against any of that. I'm just simply saying we've ended up creating for ourselves a weird world where there's expectations of how everything has to work, where and at the end of the day, I mean, it is true. It's like we spend so much money on war and defense, and you'd have a lot less angry and upset people if all that money went to making sure everybody was healthy and living good. And it's already there, right? Like, and I guess the last thing I would say is like, in a world where you didn't have to go work in the way that we do in this society, I still think most people would be doing it. Like, I think, we'd all be doing music, the three of us. We'd probably all be doing a podcast. I wouldn't be surprised if Bjorn, having had a legacy and situation in which he was, in possession or had available to him goods from the Scandinavian countries, wasn't maybe selling them on some level. Like, there's no reason you wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like.
Well, yeah, because then because there's benefit to just not having the standardized, right? Like, and but I think that it's all about what we consider acceptable, and that's like constantly changing, like generationally and culturally, and like in this culture, it's acceptable to have an apartment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's less acceptable not to.
Right.
Especially if you're of an age to where owning an apartment is something you could do.
Right.
And to get that status, you have to engage in the value system that we work in. It's just like it's this.
Sorry, guys.
Wow.
I know it's my fault.
There was a point I was trying to make back to what you were just saying, Rob, and I kind of derailed myself there in regards to like work and the ethic of it, and like if the future standard is so acceptable, it's not just an apartment, but everything's paid and there's food delivered to your door, and it's so cozy. You turn 18, you got an apartment, and everything is completely taken care of. And here's your stipend for your recreational drugs and your and your eating
cocaine
out
coupons.
bills.
Yep, exactly.
And you know, like
government issued cocaine gum.
Yeah. Here's you get
stamps.
Use of a car every other day. For 6 hours, and if you want to like reserve a car for more than that for a road trip, you just have to file a week ahead.
Right.
Here's your magical life.
Right.
Man, them motherfuckers ain't gonna know the depth of what makes it good. You have to know some struggle, some tough, some.
But I feel like every generation has said that about every
good.
generation after it. Like I feel like.
That's
When we went from horses to cars, every generation was like, if you motherfuckers, if you don't know what it's like not to crank up your machine and go plow in the field, but you have to wake it up and feed it first.
Yeah, no, I get it.
No,
like, I just feel like that's going to be a
pens,
constant. But I think that's what I'm getting at. Isn't there's like just a back and forth between nature and nurture here that we're just like, you know, that it's just eventually going to kind of shake out of us. Like if it plays out in the way it seems to be playing out long term, that eventually we build a convenient enough society that future generations who result from that society don't even have the gene inside of them to have a purpose to maintain it.
Well, to a degree, that's why I think it would be a funny movie or book or whatever, where the society does become so dependent and so puts it on autopilot that they can't then themselves take it back over if they want to. And instead of it running out of control and fighting against them, it just breaks down and everybody's fine. I like
cataclysm. I mean, you know, we were listening to the Randall Carlson thing.
Right.
In the last 150,000 years, there's been 16 potential extinction level events of, you know, celestial objects impacting the Earth, changes in temperature and sea level, etc., that could have wiped a large portion of many populations off the Earth. It's the type of damage that would make it almost impossible to pick up our civilization even as we know it now.
Right.
That happens frequently. If we're talking long game civilization, now we're 4,000 years in the future.
Right.
And these motherfuckers have no, like we're saying, concept of how any of this works. Not only does cataclysm hit in the form of extraordinarily climate change or whatever it is, and they don't know how to adapt whatsoever. Everything turns off, and we're back to the Dark Ages, or worse. There's like, I don't know, there's a point of having continued awareness as well as agency in the way that this whole mechanism works that I think intrinsically humans need to have their finger on.
Well, I think that's interesting. Also, we probably, or at least I probably gotta wrap it soon. But I think for me, I'm kind of talking about two different things. Like I think there's this funny plot line where you take things to such an extreme that instead of it being this, you know, major catastrophe, it's more just like a breakdown, and then it just literally can't be handled. I think that's funny, and it's a real, you know, potential path that things could go on. But I also feel kind of like there's another conversation which is more about what we, have talked about as like this work thing. And I think it's just, again, one of those words that's just so loaded, kind of like God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I think a society like we've created, where everything is just so based on everybody doing something or another during a certain amount of time, and what is considered a value versus what's not is so relative to so many bizarre things. Like an artist who throws fucking paint on a canvas like haphazardly could be shit, or it could be a genius who's like a millionaire, you know what I mean, literally for doing the exact same work, and with the exact same mindset, maybe like a different network or a different environment or a different reason in which like this artist, and maybe it's the work ethic, right? Maybe they both do the same paintings, but the one goes in networks and does all this other stuff, and that's why they become, the most famous painter. But regardless, the value of what they do, once that stuff is equalized, is, you know what I'm saying? It could be zero and it could be millions. And then there's people working in like these, like we were talking about, kind of like arbitrary fields that just like don't necessarily produce anything. They're not really working per se. They're just like, I don't know, carrying books back and forth, or, like the equivalent of something like that. So anyway, I think all that stuff,
HR,
or others, there's a lot of stuff, and some people in each of those fields probably are doing important stuff. I'm just saying, in every like administrative office environment, there's definitely people there who have, or just who have a job where it's like, just like on the movie Office Space, where they're like, wait, so you're saying he fills the report out and he gives it to you, and you take it and you give it to him, and they're like, so why can't he give it to him? And they're like, trying
that's
to
just
optimize.
Not how it goes. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
he's got to get it first.
Yeah, it's like, what? But I mean, there's a lot of people. There's, I would say, what, like an eighth of the workers, if not more, in the world are probably in that category of just taking it from this guy and bringing it to that lady or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah,
so
I mean, like we're all middlemen to something.
But if they do it 40 hours a week or more, and they're given benefits, and they can go to that office and be considered like an equal player, right, or something like that, then it's like they're legit in the world. Or again, if they're a painter and they're just doing it at home or in their studio or whatever, but they're selling it at the right level, that's totally acceptable. But somebody like who's like a musician and who's getting by just fine, but not putting away for retirement long term or something, you know what I mean, but like living their dream, is kind of seen as a failure. Like our scale, I'm just saying, to begin with, is so outside of any real logic other than the circumstances of just like what supply and demand dictates at that moment.
Right. The logic is the industrial age and the productivity of the tribe, and like it's less about the individual and it's more about the survival of the group. Right.
Yeah, I guess I'm
the logic
saying
behind work is kind of
what's infused that into. I think that's what's infused that into our being, such that we think of it as almost innate. You know what I mean? I think we would naturally be innovators, inventors, creators, workers, all that stuff. I think that's human. You can't, any of us, leave us alone somewhere and we're like, I want to do this, or I'm going to switch this around, or there's something that we do. Based on our own just desire. Like I don't think.
Sorry.
No, that's it. I'm sorry.
I'll just offer a thought on the question I was asking before, which is I think that actually what will turn out in that situation, given enough time where humanity just doesn't need to work, is I don't think the hypothesis would remain for very long that like the gene would be removed from us to have purpose or to have a work ethic or have a drive for motivation. I don't think that's what would happen. Okay. I think what would happen is we would actually experience a huge diversity of work. Instead of these sort of what we would see now, if we look at now as like these sort of narrow channels of like the artist, the entrepreneur, the blah, 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 whatever, I think what we would see is that every individual, like the standard would be that every individual has just this huge diversity of ways in which they work.
Right.
And that they wouldn't nail themselves to any particular career, and they would just dive into experience after experience.
Well, and I think in that, and I think maybe we're getting there socially to be ready to even say this and really feel it, is that it's got to be acceptable to be any type and stripe of person.
Right.
It's got to be acceptable to want to opt out too.
Right.
It's got to be acceptable to have a brain that functions differently.
Right.
And you got to have access to everything that you can use to better yourself in whatever type of person you are. And like we have never been that culture and still aren't. But we can see a future where we really start respecting everybody's and this is great because it's individual liberty realized in the purest, most celebrated form in a socialist manner.
Right. Yeah, and I think that finding that balance would be so cool because at the end of the day, I am someone who still believes in paying taxes, and I'm not of the belief that somehow, because I don't want to turn into the society where the robots make everything and we don't know how. So you're still going to have programmers, people who make computers. You still got to somehow make that worthwhile for people to maybe dedicate more time to that kind of stuff or be more involved in it than they might otherwise be as hobbyists, in order to have some sort of industry. Because I think that's something that, you will need. Yes, robots can maybe handle manufacturing and stuff, but on some level, we're going to have to keep doing all that too. So I think realistically, you have to have still some way that society does it. And so the balance between what you're saying, Bjorn, this individual, realize what you want to do yourself and your best thing to do mixed with what's the bottom line for all of us. For example, does everybody just jury duty need to come in and, work in a factory or in an office for X amount of time a year? Maybe for 1 month a year, there's up to 1,000 things you can choose from, but you're just meant to do one of them. Or maybe it's 6 months a year. I don't know. And some fair thing. But I'm okay with the idea of, in order, because at a certain point it costs something, right? Even to have all the food stored in one bin, you got to have a bin. You know what I mean? And if you can't agree to maintaining the bin,
then that's to stay clean. Yeah, exactly.
Right, and therefore, if that bottom line can't happen, then you can't do the first thing.
Yeah.
So I think you gotta probably base what a new society would call a work ethic off of what's the absolute bottom line we all need to somehow equitably, because not everybody's the same, like you're saying, people have different brains, but contribute in order to keep this thing running, But beyond that, beyond keeping it running, making sure everybody has what we consider the basic needs, obviously it's not I don't think you would want a socialized world where you have to do more than what we can all agree is necessary. But at the same time, if people aren't doing what's necessary, that is...
I don't think there'd be a mandate for labor. I'm fully on board with you guys that automation will negate that as a necessity. And I think that there will be, a portion, maybe close to a fifth or more of the population that really wants to be involved in governance and maintenance and the way that things operate.
Right.
There'll be plenty of people that are super happy with what they've got.
I think you're right, yeah.
But there'll be plenty of people that also just really want to participate and find that part of society the really fulfilling part. That part of humans, which can be ego-driven sometimes, the desire to go out and make a name for yourself, and that part I don't see going away as quickly as the desire to esteem work and esteem labor, because I think, just as Rob was saying, even the esteem for labor is definitely a last 6,000 year cycle thing.
Right.
Before agricultural, social city building ages, the dopest dude was the dude who found all the time to kick it.
Right.
And
Probably, yeah.
Right?
How did he do it?
It's in the ancient scrolls, exactly that quote. The dopest dude is the dude who finds all the time to kick it.
Hey,
It's
but
one
I
of the
think I
oldest. It's one of the oldest phrases there is.
I gotta wrap her up pretty soon.
Yeah, man.
Me too.
I like where you're going.
Yeah.
I think we found the title of the episode. The dopest dude is the dude who finds all the time to kick it.
I like that.
I think there should be like a subtitle, and then that's a book. Yeah, like reflections on modern
The Third
workforce.
World War.
Speaking of
Right.
the person, the animal that
I was
has
just
that
thinking
figured
about
out the
Bronco.
most, he just walked by out the door.
Yeah, he did.
Shout out to Bronco,
Did.
and shout out to the elf in the back corner of your
Oh, yeah.
place, because that guy has been staring at me all night.
Good Yule.
The homie. Go you.
Yeah. God
All right,
bless.
buddy.
Captain Caveman.
All right.
Fare thee
Peace.
well.
God bless.
Peace.
Rock'em sock'em,
Much love.
Flawedcast Nation.
Much love.